So the first thing that struck me when I came to AKS, and this is a couple of years ago, was the strength of the community, and it was really palpable when I walked in through the door. And I'm very lucky to be joined today by two of my colleagues. I've got Alan McEwen here, who's the deputy head, who pretty much runs everything in the senior school, it seems, day to day, and has an oversight in particular of the academic business of the school. And I'm joined by Dr. Chris Jessup, who is our teaching and learning lead. And I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, Chris, and I think I may have told you this before, but when I first came for interview, part of the process was I had to go and watch a lesson and give some feedback, and I don't know whether it's to my benefit or to my peril that it turned out to be your lesson. It was a pedagogical masterclass in which everyone's needs were catered for, and the lesson drove forward, and there was brilliant outcomes for everyone, and we really thought about the individual pathways. And I've come to realise since I've been here that yes, you are brilliant, Chris, but you're not the only one. And I've seen some fantastic teaching, and I've worked with some extraordinary colleagues. And I think for me, what came forward was when we moved over to Teams and we had to do the whole thing in a couple of weeks. We ended up switching our trade, changing the mode of our profession really effectively. And that's when I really appreciated the quality of the teachers we've got here. Now, as the teaching and learning lead, I'm sure you've seen plenty of that in the school.
Well, I've been here probably longer than I expected to, but quite a long time. And it's because I love the school and I love the place. And I have to say, I've worked with colleagues here for a number of years, and they've always been adaptable. They've always been open to kind of improving and trying to make themselves better, as I have tried to be myself. And I think that shows through with both the way that we moved into our remote learning, but in our teaching in general. I mean, Alan, you've come from Arnold originally, but you've probably seen the same thing.
No, I would agree, Chris, and I think that adaptable is a really good word, because obviously the face of education and the needs of our pupils continually changes, and we've got to adapt with that as well. But it's the essence of being the best that you can be, which I think really epitomises our staff with regards to the teaching and learning side of things. And you'll know, Chris, that's one of the reasons why we introduced the Iris Connect system, must be about 4 or 5 years ago now, really as a key development tool for staff to hone their pedagogical expertise, but also to share that expertise really throughout the school, which I think has been very effective.
I think it's been really powerful because what it allows you to do is it allows you obviously to watch each other teach within a safe environment, safe for the kids, safe for the staff, but watch each other and learn from each other. And I think a mixture of that and our sort of whole school membership to the Chartered College of Teaching has allowed us to continue to progress over the years, but certainly the Iris Connect has really helped, and it's helped us build a bank of CPD resources that we can kind of go back to time and time again. And I think it's really useful. I think it's a big tool.
So what are the things you think have changed? Because the craft of teaching is now completely different. So I started teaching 25 years ago, and it was what it was. And I like I think of myself as young and progressive, but I appreciate maybe I'm a bit of a dinosaur nowadays. It's certainly moved on massively in that time. But what have you seen in the last few years, do you think?
Well, I think how I've seen it is when I entered the profession, teachers were very much lone islands. They were kind of, once they'd sort of qualified, they were left to their own devices. And that's great, and many of them were very good, but the ability to share has meant that you can kind of magpie the different ideas from each other, and therefore catering for all children's needs has become far easier to do when you can swap ideas much more readily. So that's one thing that I think we have developed, and this idea of being able to magpie off people really has helped, I think, a number of staff to keep fresh and keep enthusiastic about the profession as well, which is one of the things I think, I hope you two see as well, that our staff love teaching, they love being in school, and they're enthusiastic about what they do, and that sort of shines through to me.
And I think it is that spirit, people who simply love school and who simply love learning, and that's the magic in the school, and that's maybe the thing which I felt when I first walked through the door. And one thing I've noticed is amongst the students as well, it is cool to do well. There is that spirit of success. And I think that rubs off on the teachers. For me, it's very important that it's not just the academic piece. And there's a lot of very good research about the fact that you need something else going on to be successful in your main field. So there's the US psychologist Angela Duckworth, who did a lot of work on grit, which is your capacity to keep going with a thing. And even if you're an elite concert pianist, you need something else on the side in order to maintain your focus. And you, Alan, I think with your view of the whole school, I'm sure you'll agree that everything else we do actually contributes to the academic.
Oh, it does. I think it really all does go hand in hand, and you know, our focus as well on character education. You know, we mentioned there about how things have changed in the classroom, maybe over the years, and one of the things that at AKS I think we really try and focus on is student-led learning within the classroom. And that brings out all sorts of characteristics that we want in our pupils as they go forward. Those communication skills, the tenacity that you just talked about there, the grit, to not give up when times get hard. Those are all key facets that will develop them as a young person, but also will have a very positive impact on their academic outcomes at the same time. So everything goes hand in hand. And I really feel as if we've got I guess within our culture and our ethos within the school, there's real alignment there to bring the best out of the young people, but also to bring the best out of our staff. And Chris has mentioned there that collaborative approach, and that comes across very much, I think, within the departments and the various culture that you've just explained there within the school.
And I think, Chris, you're right, and I do reflect on what teaching was like. Maybe there are elements in the world where it's still like this, where the teacher will go in and they will shut the door and they will be the boss in whatever room they're in, and they will hope when they emerge 30 years later at the end of their career that they've done a decent job. And I think the fact is, you can't develop anything like that. You can't learn anything in isolation on your own. There's no other field throughout human endeavour, throughout history, where someone has, from a standing start, developed a skill or a profession or a trade, and become an absolute master of it, completely in isolation. Everyone builds on everyone else, and I think that's what's really important. But of course, the other thing to reflect on is when I started teaching. In fact, I go back to when I was at school as a student. The world for which I was being prepared was fundamentally different. And we have an examination system which in some ways has its origins in Victorian times. You look back at A-levels going back to the 1950s, they were called advanced levels because most people didn't do them. 10% of people did A-levels, most people didn't. Now that's completely flipped around. Most people will continue with education until you're 18, because the world that follows from it is different. And I suppose one thing I'm really interested in is how are we adapting our education, and what do we need to adapt to prepare for the realities of the world now? Because it's certainly not the education I had when I was at school.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the big things that we changed and were very aware of a few years ago was in fact enhancing the way our young people think. There's not just one way of thinking to solve problems and so on. There are many different ways, and that is definitely a facet of that ever-evolving world that you talk about there, and the careers that our young people will enter into. So I think we obviously designed our bespoke Learning to Learn programme, which all of our Year 7 and Year 8 pupils have done over the last 3-4 years. And that's been a really important programme in terms of trying to enhance, I guess, the independent thinking skills of our young people, and getting them to, I guess, to consider things critically and analyse things as they move through school. So really going about their education in a different way than we would have in our day. And I think that's been something that has gone down well with pupils and with parents within the school community, and has become a cornerstone of building upon many of those other skills.
I mean, I think the Learning to Learn thing has been absolutely brilliant, and I know why it was created. It was created to serve a purpose. So in that utilitarian sense, you might create a course of that nature, but people love it, and it's the thing that they actually talk about, and they love talking about their psychology, about how they learn. They love talking about metacognition, even though they might not call it metacognition, but I think it's really important that the students understand how they are thinking. But the fact that they love it so much, I think is really exciting. And there's a lot of the things we're thinking about now which take that a bit further. And it's not the sort of thing you'd want to do. You don't want to make your own profession redundant, but the idea is that our students, when they leave school, they don't need us. They can come back and we'll support them. But the ideal is they don't need us again. They will have the skills to ask and answer good questions for themselves, be able to do research, to learn something independently. And I think that's part of the next steps, isn't it? The sort of things we're developing now.
It is. No, I completely agree, and it's a really good point there that you make about the fact that our pupils, when they leave the school, they don't need us anymore, and that's all part of the education that we want to be able to provide. And really, with that in mind and thinking towards the future there and that progression, we're obviously thinking very, very closely about our Key Stage 3 curriculum and how we can base that very much around an inquiry-based curriculum, so that our pupils are really honing a lot of those key inquiry skills, thinking skills, independent working skills as they move through the school from such a young age into obviously examination, age groups and so on. But you're absolutely right.
The thing I love about it though is it all fits really beautifully together. If you think about it, you've got your learning to learn. We're a round square school. They fit hand in hand, as well as our inquiry-based sort of Key Stage 3 curriculum. And it really does all push together to develop these skills. I mean, I've got a daughter in Key Stage 3, and I feel very, very lucky actually. She's involved in a number of things, including various round square initiatives. And my wife went home and she sort of said, I can't believe in year 8 she's doing this sort of leadership, this sort of thing. And to me, it's wonderful as a parent, rather than as a teacher in this school, to see this sort of thing happening and this sort of thing available to all children within the year groups. And it all fits so nicely together, I think.
But I think that's a really good point, Chris. And actually, as a school, I think we're very, very inclusive. In other words, all those opportunities, be they co-curricular opportunities outside the classroom, but also the academic enrichment opportunities that we offer, they're open to everybody. It's not just a particular group of pupils. Everybody gets those opportunities to enhance their own interests, their own thirst for knowledge, their own curiosity. And I think that's a really special aspect of this school, that it is inclusive in such a way, both academically and in every other wider sense, really.
But I do want people to have that global outlook. I do want people to have an international perspective, which doesn't come naturally, particularly in a lockdown, but at any point. And one of the things I really value about the school is being part of Round Square, where we have links with 200 other leading schools with the same philosophy of character education, but fundamentally different settings. And I think it's been very enriching for our students. And the example we talked about just recently was the A-level psychology class pairing up with a similar class in India, getting a completely different perspective on the same subject. And I think that's incredibly exciting. And that's the thing which I don't think you get if you just stick to a core GCSE and A-level curriculum. It's not built in. There's no philosophy to support it. You need all of the other stuff if you're going to be an effective learner for yourself later on.
No, I would agree, and I think it all adds to the academic outcomes as well. And thinking to the future, those collaboration that we did with the school in India through the psychology, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
We've seen how effective that can be. We've seen how engaged our pupils were with that project, something they led themselves. So that is definitely there's more of that to come as we learn from pupils, from staff around the world in an international sense. No doubt about it.
So to put you on the spot a bit, Chris, if I may, we may as well while we're here.
Works right.
But to put you on the spot a little bit, thinking about what the school looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like in the next 1, 2, 3 years, thinking about how you want teaching and learning to develop, how would you encapsulate that?
I would like very much our exam curriculums are driven often by knowledge first, and you have to have knowledge within learning. You can't escape that. But I would like to see within our curriculum continue to develop the ability to take knowledge and take it further than perhaps a curriculum would ask you to go into the inquiry, to use digital skills and develop our digital skills, to look ahead, look out of the school, go internationally perhaps, but I'd like to see that. I'd like to see kids still love learning all the way through, all the time. And I think they do in this school, but it excites me, the possibilities out there, using many of the tools that have come to us during lockdown and the tools that will be available to us as we move forward, many of the platforms we've got.
I think it's an irony of independent learning is that it is a skill which you have to be taught. And I think you can't just hope for the best.
No.
You can't just fling knowledge at people or fling skills at people or experiences and just hope that somehow some brilliant learners will emerge. They might do, but you need a bit more design behind it. And I think a lot of the things which we're excited about now, I suppose they're for a future conversation.
Yeah.
I think really are putting the detail on how we develop people as really good inquirers with proper skills, where they can actually synthesize things and bring it all together. And one of the other things we've talked about quite a lot is how in the world very few things, in fact I can't think of anything, it belongs to a single discipline. There's very few problems in the world which are a GCSE geography problem or an A-level history problem or an A-level further maths problem. They're all transdisciplinary. They are all at least interdisciplinary. You need to be able to synthesize everything together, which is why we're thinking a lot about how the different subjects gel, how you bring all of your knowledge together. But I think it's also important to think about how you express those ideas going forward. And one of the things which we do want is we want our students to be effective communicators in any medium. So I think those skills, the ability to synthesize that information, come to a conclusion and express it really well, that's the thing which is going to be most valuable in the future, not any particular discipline. And we can have views about whether GCSE or A-level or any particular exam system does the job. My view, to be honest, is no exam system does the job. It's the rest of it that does the job. The exams are simply the passport to the next phase.
Yeah.